As the 2024 presidential election looms, all eyes are on Georgia, a key battleground state where a legal fight over new election rules is intensifying. With President Joe Biden stepping aside, Vice President Kamala Harris and Minnesota Governor Tim Walz are leading the Democratic ticket, while former President Donald Trump is making a bid for the White House again, this time with Ohio Senator J.D. Vance. In this high-stakes political climate, Democrats have filed a lawsuit against Georgia's recent changes to its voting laws, arguing that these new rules are designed to suppress voter turnout, particularly among minority and urban communities. This lawsuit not only challenges the constitutionality of these new election laws, but also sets the stage for a broader battle over voting rights, election integrity, and the future of democracy in America. In response to the 2020 election, Georgia's Republican-led legislature passed SB 202, the Election Integrity Act of 2021, aimed at tightening voting security. This law introduced stricter voter ID requirements for absentee ballots, limited drop boxes, banned mobile voting units, and restricted providing food and water to voters in line. Supporters argue these measures are necessary to prevent voter fraud and ensure election integrity, claiming they will enhance public trust by making it harder for illegal votes to be cast. Critics, however, see SB 202 as an effort to suppress voter turnout, particularly among minority groups that tend to vote Democratic. They argue these restrictions disproportionately impact urban areas with high minority populations and were implemented in response to the increased absentee voting that helped Joe Biden win Georgia in 2020. In response to the new voting laws, the Democratic Party, along with various civil rights organizations such as the American Civil Liberties Union and the NAACP, have filed a lawsuit challenging the constitutionality of SB 202. The lawsuit argues that these new rules violate the Voting Rights Act of 1965 and the U.S. Constitution by disproportionately disenfranchising minority voters. The plaintiffs claim that the law's provisions are not only unnecessary, but are designed to make it more difficult for certain groups of people to vote. The lawsuit focuses on several key provisions of SB 202, arguing that they impose undue burdens on voters. Under the new law, voters are required to provide a driver's license number, state ID number, or the last 4 digits of their Social Security number when requesting and returning absentee ballots. The lawsuit claims that this requirement could disenfranchise voters who do not have easy access to these forms of identification, particularly older and low-income individuals. SB 202 restricts the number of absentee ballot drop boxes to 1 per 100,000 active voters in each county, and they must be located inside early voting locations and only available during business hours. The lawsuit argues that this significantly reduces the availability of drop boxes, especially in densely populated urban areas, making it harder for voters to submit their ballots. The law also prohibits the use of mobile voting units, which were deployed in 2020 to help manage long lines and provide additional voting access, particularly in high-traffic areas. Democrats argue that this ban disproportionately impacts voters in urban and minority communities where mobile units were most effective in reducing wait times. SB 202 makes it illegal to provide food or water to voters waiting in line within 150 feet of a polling place or 25 feet of any voters standing in line. Critics argue that this provision is unnecessary and punitive, especially given the historically long wait times at both polling places in minority neighborhoods, and is intended to discourage voters from remaining in line to cast their ballots. Georgia's Republican leaders argue that SB 202 is necessary to secure the state's elections. They believe the law's measures will prevent voter fraud, ensure only legal votes are counted, and maintain transparency. Supporters see requiring voter ID for absentee ballots as a common sense step, noting that similar ID requirements already exist for in-person voting and that most Georgians have the necessary ID. Limiting drop boxes and banning mobile voting units are viewed as ways to standardize election practices and prevent tampering. Regarding the restrictions on food and water, Republicans argue that these rules prevent electioneering and undue influence at polling places, allowing voters to bring their own or have it delivered by non-campaign individuals. The legal fight over Georgia's new election laws have national implications, symbolizing the broader battle over voting rights in the U.S. The outcome could set a precedent for other states considering similar laws, highlighting the partisan divide over election security and voter access. Democrats and voting rights advocates view the lawsuit as crucial to countering what they see as suppression efforts nationwide. They argue that these laws target minority voters whose participation has increased, potentially benefiting Democrats and arguably disadvantaging Donald Trump and the Republicans. They believe federal action is needed to protect voting rights and ensure equal access. Republicans argue that states should control their own election laws and see federal intervention as undermining state sovereignty. They view the lawsuit as an attempt by Democrats to federalize elections and block measures intended to prevent fraud and secure the electoral process. The courts will play a crucial role in determining the outcome of this legal battle. The lawsuit challenging SB 202 will likely go through several levels of the federal court system, with appeals expected regardless of the initial rulings. As the case moves through the courts, it will test the judiciary's interpretation of the Voting Rights Act and the U.S. Constitution, particularly regarding the balance between preventing voter fraud and ensuring access to the ballot. The outcome of this case could have significant impact on future elections, not only in Georgia, but across the entire nation. If the courts rule in favor of the plaintiffs, it could set a precedent that makes it harder for states to enact similar laws. On the other hand, if the courts uphold SB 202, it could embolden other states to pass similar measures, potentially reshaping the electoral landscape for years to come. Public reaction to Georgia's new election laws and the lawsuit is sharply divided along party lines. Supporters of the lawsuit argue it protects voting rights and prevents disenfranchising minority voters who tend to vote Democratic, viewing the laws as regressive for democracy. Opponents see the lawsuit as undermining efforts to secure elections and prevent fraud, claiming it is part of a broader attempt by Democrats to portray Republicans as suppressing votes despite the law's intention to protect electoral integrity. This case is likely to have significant political fallout, with both parties using it to mobilize supporters ahead of the 2024 election. Democrats see it as a chance to champion voting rights, while Republicans focus on defending election security and maintaining control in Georgia, a key battleground state. The lawsuit challenging Georgia's new election laws is shaping up to be a defining moment for voting rights in America. With the 2024 presidential election approaching and the nation's attention focused on Georgia, the outcome of this legal battle will have far-reaching implications for the future of elections not only in Georgia, but across the country. Whether the courts side with the Democrats, viewing the new laws as an attempt to suppress voter turnout, or with the Republicans, seeing them as necessary for ensuring election integrity, the decision will resonate through the 2024 election and beyond. As the lawsuit proceeds, it will be a crucial test of the balance between securing elections and protecting the fundamental vote to right. The eyes of the nation are on Georgia as this legal battle unfolds and shapes the future of American democracy. We will be following these developments and more, so stay tuned for the latest updates.